Sound speeds, and welcome back to Speed Bumps, the podcast that takes place during my drive home from set usually, but it happens to be any kind of work basically. Currently, I am teaching classes at the Union Hall, so that's one of the things I'm doing, and I am excited to say there has been no changes with regards to the camera setup. I'm going to continue to record in 5.7K on this Insta360 X3 camera. I can also show anything that happens in any different direction. If something stupid happens, some idiot cuts me off or whatever, and all is well. I'm still recording into the BPTRX, which is recording, which is good, and it is still the Deity WLA Pro. So no real changes there. Let's waste no more time and get right into our content. For our first topic, what is a thumper? Now, if you don't know what a thumper is, pay close attention. If you know what a thumper is, maybe this is recap for you or something like that. It's at least important to know what it is. If you've heard the term and don't know what they are for, what you're using them for, something like that, it's good to know. So we're going to cover that in this episode. Now, plain and simple, there are 4 people that basically are in charge of basically recording sound on a set, in the acquisition of sound basically, and there's one person that does playback and performance of sound. Now, I talk about those 5 positions in the class I teach, and if you want to, you can reach out to me at alan@soundspeeds.us, and I will gladly sell you that class, which sells for $50. I offer a slight discount if you're a channel member for at least a month. So keep that in mind. If you're a channel member, tell me, and I'll give you that discount. Okay, now a thumper. Let's just say you have a sequence, and there's a bunch of people dancing. If there is a need to basically play a little bit of music just to kind of get into the scene, but as soon as they say action, you're killing the music, sound mixers will sometimes be willing to do that, simple playback. But if the scene requires more complicated playback, like there's dialogue, there's dancing, dialogue, dancing, you need to have a playback operator. This is someone that's going to come in there with Pro Tools Playback or some other DAW of their choice, and they're going to basically take time code that they either generate the time code or they have it already sent to them on a file, and they put a time-coded playback sound to be recorded that's going to basically match what they're going to be doing in post. So sometimes they don't even do time code. The important thing to note is that a sound playback person, there's a lot of different things they do. I'm not going to get that into this because it's in the class. But basically, if there is dialogue to be recorded over music in a club, for example, you can't just have full frequency range music playing over the dialogue, can you? For a few different reasons. One of the big reasons is that it's going to overlap in frequencies and not allow you to record clean dialogue. Another big reason is that sometimes if you marry the music and the beats and stuff like that into the show, you need to actually be aware that those beats are what people are going to be dancing to. So unless you cut it up fairly quickly and you're fairly matching the beats, like 3 or 4 beats per cut, you're going to be able to match those up fairly decently. Even something that's 120 beats per minute to something that's 150 beats per minute, you're probably going to be able to match it up pretty decently in the edit, as long as people are bouncing back and forth for maybe 4 beats or so. Anything more than that, you're probably going to start to see it, because that's when it starts to really fall off. But if it's something more complicated than just simple playback, like, for example, doing dialogue recording at the same time as music, you don't want to have that sound go full frequency. So we pull out what's basically in reality is a subwoofer, or they could use a very well-tuned speaker and drop it to what's called a thumper or a thump track. And what this does is it provides just bass frequencies, usually around like 40 hertz, sometimes 50 hertz. You don't want to cut into the fundamental vocal frequencies, which would normally start around 75 hertz. And these thumpers are not normally very loud, because you don't want to end up still putting pressure on the microphone that would adjust the headroom, causing your level to fluctuate. Another thing is, if there's a big heavy bass sound, then you're going to end up shaking things like chandeliers, which do have jingling metal, maybe jingling glass, something like that, and that jingle would be in a vocal frequency range. So you don't want to end up having it interfere with that. So a thumper is basically a subwoofer producing the bass frequencies that people are going to dance to, allowing you to record production audio at the same time. So you basically have, in the you've been hearing frequency spectrum, the thumper frequencies way down here, and the vocals start here and go up to here. So you're basically able to dial in pretty accurately in post By eliminating out the thump track, you're basically able to hear exactly what you're wanting to. Whoa, there's chairs on the road. Whoa, he almost hit him. Yikes. Those chairs should not be there. I'm sure, I don't know if you saw it because the clip for the thing that's holding the camera to the window might have been in the way. If it wasn't, you'll see it. Sorry if you didn't. But basically, the thumper is providing the background music, just the beat, so people can dance to it. Now, there's another aspect that's important to know about the thumper. You can select, and this is why you need a playback person, you can select when it goes in, when it's full frequency music between the dialogue, and then drops to a thumper. Or you could have it be where the music is played, and then they'll say thumper, if it's not really going to be timed, if like people are just going to dance, and then whenever the director says action, they're going to start, talking again, in which case they got to have the playback person on standby so that way they can hit and engage the thumper just when you need them to. So that's why you need a Pro Tools playback guy. So a thump track, very valuable. You still want to do things like, make sure that there are no footsteps over the dialogue. And one of the big tricks that we use on set for that is I tell the second AD to have the people that are dancing glue their feet to the ground. That way, they're basically rocking back and forth the same way as they would any other time, but they're not moving their feet. As long as you have a mass of people and they're all bouncing up and down to the beat of the music, you don't need to see their feet going step back, step back, step back, back and forth, back and forth. You don't need to see that. You just need to see their upper torso bouncing back and forth. And they don't need to move their feet. And therefore you get cleaner audio. Now you can end up saying, well, why don't they just wear soft shoes? Like tennis shoes or something like that. Well, that may be what you have to do. But a lot of the times in clubs, people wear clip-cloppy, noisy heels. Sometimes high heels. Sometimes they'll just wear big old huge clogs or something like that are just ridiculous and loud. But regardless, when you drop to a thumper, when you're recording dialogue, you want to make sure there's no other noise there. Noise in the sense of footsteps, noise in the sense of background talking, none of that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm starting to deviate and get off topic, which is one thing that you guys know I love to do. So there you go. That's what a thumper is and how you would use it. For the second topic, we're going to discuss why boom operators should absolutely always wear headphones on set. Every East Coast person that I know that is a boom operator, that is a pro, wears headphones. What it is a European thing. And even then, not always a European thing. A lot of newer people are saying everyone in my department should wear headphones, and they tell people to wear them. And that's a good practice. If you're not wearing headphones on set, let me tell you why. In some pro sound forums, I've seen people say, I don't like to wear headphones. That's a mixer thing. They're going to tell me if they need me to adjust anything. How? If you're not wearing headphones, a mixer is supposed to leave their console in the middle of a take and come tell you, hey, you're off axis, or tell you there's a bad noise here, we need to address it. No. That is your job as a boom operator to be able to hear and address noises on set. The way you hear those things is by having headphones on. Your ears hear things differently than headphones do. Headphones often embellish and increase any of the background noises because your brain has something called, and I did this video called noise gating, and it has something called a pulvinar nuclei, which is it's part of the thalamus, and it's responsible for filtering out things that are not important to you. So if there is a background noise that is not important to you, your ears filter it out. So one of the things we do as pro sound people is we have to train our ears to unfocus and or not unfocus, but we have to train them to unhear and unfilter out things so that we hear all the noises that are on set. That takes a little bit of time. But another thing to keep in mind is that about the weighting curve. Your hearing may be between, let's say, 20 and 20,000 hertz. But your optimal area range for you to be able to hear might be between closer to 300 to maybe 14,000 hertz. And so what you can do is you plot that out on a graph. You're most sensitive to the sounds that were most likely found in nature, like waterfalls, like birds chirping, people moving around and sneaking around in grass or in woods, and they're stepping on they're stepping on dirt. They're stepping into sand. They're stepping on rocks, footsteps, padded footsteps, rain. We hear those sounds. Part of the survival instincts that we've had in years past before we lived inside. So if that is what our ears are tuned to, there's not a hard cutoff. Where as soon as you get to 20,000 hertz or 20 hertz, there's a hard cutoff and you can't hear those things. most of the time, people are able to hear higher than that when they're a young child. They're sometimes able to detect that on the lower end when you get pretty much any time. And part of the reason is that inside of the cochlea, inside of our ear, there is basically the hammer, anvil, and the stirrup catches the vibrations that hit the tympanum, which is kind of like our ear. They call it eardrum, but it's the tympanic membrane, which is responsible for basically acting like a capsule, a microphone capsule, and then it amplifies through the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Those are the common names for the three bones. And then it goes on through I believe it's the oval window, or it's the round window. I think it's the oval window, where the stirrup basically recreates and amplifies those vibrations into the cochlea, which is basically a watertight chamber that's in like a snail shell. Well, the frequencies closest to that window where it's pumping out the sound are the higher pitched sounds. And as the little sound waves pulse through the liquid that's inside, get all the way to the inside where it hits the other end. If it's the apex of the cochlea, it turns into nerve endings that go to the brain. But in every single one of every single little bit of that cochlea, there are what they're called supercilia, little fibers, little hairs that stick up, and they're sensitive to certain vibrations, certain frequencies, and that sends signals back to your brain. But what happens if you end up, the hammer, anvil, and the stirrup are pumping out really, really big volumes, loud volumes of vibrations through the cochlea? What happens? Very simply put, it puts big, huge pulses of liquid, and those supercilia start over time knocking over, where they become less sensitive and don't move as much to the flow of the fluid that's punching on it. That's why you lose the ability to hear the highs first, because as you start to go farther and farther through there, the frequency sensitivity becomes lower. That's why people are usually able to hear lower frequencies better than highs. I'm starting to get a little bit off topic, but basically that's in a nutshell the way it works. So you're able to pick up the sounds of nature just fine, because as those waves start to curve around through the cochlea, as the waves start to dissipate, as it gets deeper and deeper in there, closer to 20 hertz, you're going to start to lose a lot of that momentum. So it's going to become less of a stimulant of those supercilia deep inside your ear. That's why you're less sensitive to them, and that's why it's so easy for you to damage the highs. Now you may say, well, if that's the case, why don't we have really sharp hearing above 18K? It's because part of it is because the waves, actually, you know what? I'm getting so off topic. In a nutshell, it's because the waves, as they blast through, they're not really knocking down those as much as right where the first curve of the cochlea is. Right at that curve, that's where the waves hit the most, and that's where you're going to knock down those supercilia the quickest. Okay, I finished the thought. And that might be around 18K or something like that, and then anything above that will still be dissipated and knocked over, but you'll usually lose around 18K quickest, and then as the vibrations go on through there. But that first curve, as it starts to make the spiral, that first curve right there, you're going to be knocking a big pulse of fluid into those supercilia, where it's going to take most of the damage real quickly there. There you go. Okay, so I've mentioned that. I don't remember how we got onto that topic, but we did, and so it's going to be amazing to continue where we're going with this. Here's the thing. Your ears hear things different. This is where I was going with it. The A weighting curve. Your ears hear a certain frequency range more sensitively. Your headphones and the microphones are more or less flat. Even if there's a slight boost, it's going to be a little flatter than it would be than your human hearing frequency response, let's say. So as you put headphones on, it's going to basically put everything in your ears at the same relative volume. And depending on the volume you set it to, you're going to have your headphones and your microphone do you no favors. It's going to basically let you hear everything regardless of your ear sensitivity to it. Now you may say you're still not going to hear those frequencies if it's picked up. Correct. But it's not the detection and then processing from your brain. The microphone picks it up at regular volume and pumps it out to you at regular volume. And therefore, because you're hearing it closer, it actually is more amplified on the outskirts of it. So that's why you will, at least on the low end, you'll hear those sounds just fine, because they're picked up by the microphone and it's going to be more amplified. So in a nutshell, that's the way it works. If there's an audiologist out there listening to this and is like, oh, but you're totally wrong, please tell me in the comments. I would love to actually get updated information. That's the way it was explained to me years ago. I remember doing this and learning it in biology class in high school, biology in college, and believe it or not, that's one of the very few things that I retained. That was at least part of the core curriculum. Okay, The reason this is important is because if I'm standing in the middle of a hotel room and I have a boom out 15 feet and I'm booming 2 people standing on a balcony, it sounds different where I am in the hotel room than where the actors are standing on the balcony. That is an important distinction because it's going to sound different. If I need to address a sound, or if there was something that I heard out there that I hear in the room with me, I'm not hearing the actors. What if they're having a very quiet conversation and it's noisy out there? All I'm hearing, if I'm standing inside the hotel room, all I'm hearing is the traffic of the road and all the stuff coming through there. The microphone may be in the right position, but I need to have that microphone there so that I could dial in on exactly where the axis is, if I'm booming from behind, for example. You can say, oh, I'm good with the microphone, I'm going to nail it every single time. Maybe. But at the same time, by having your headphones on, you're going to be able to hear things like, for example, if a lav mic is being used by one of them, or something like on the microphone suddenly starts hissing and buzzing. You could address that. If you're on the second story of a place and the mixer's on the ground floor, is the mixer supposed to run up the stairs between the takes and say, boom operator, well, you need to fix this? By then, it would be great to already have a plan and address something. So that's why you need to wear headphones, because things sound different where the boom operator is versus on set. And only when you listen to what the mixer is doing, or you listen to your boom, or you listen to the mix track, whatever the mixer feeds you, only by doing that are you going to given a good idea of the way things sound that you're delivering. And that's going to make you so much better if you actually wear headphones. Get into the habit of it, whether you use headphones or use inner ear monitors, regardless. You need to be able to monitor the sound that you're responsible for. Plain and simple. So there you have it, another episode of the Speed Bumps podcast. I'm going to say it, in the can. Gotta love it. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. If you would like to re-record the outro and submit to me, there's information on recording the outro down in the description below. There is also information on the technical specs I require, and the copy is down there too. So if you'd like to do the outro, give me a credit, do it correctly, and you'll be in next week's episode, or maybe not next week, but some other future week of the Speed Bumps podcast, at least through the end of 2023. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode of Speed Bumps in 2 weeks.
If you'd like to ask a sound-related question to be answered in a future episode, send text, audio, or video to ssp@soundspeeds.us. Want to record this outro? Details in the description below. Find us on social media and online at www.soundspeeds.us. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more sound-related content.